Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Hakumei in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 13, Part 2, Mission. For Naruto, the celebration of their victory, held in a small rundown inn that had been abandoned not too long ago, would always start out in snapshots. He and Sasuke with their arms on each other's shoulders singing "We Are the Champions." Kimimaro attempting to take out his entire skeleton and make it dance, only to have to drink about a gallon of milk in one go to keep himself conscious. Sai drawing scenes from the battle, as described, and making them come to life for those who were not able to see every single blow. Gaara giving verbal replays, enhanced in order to sound more interesting, to Neji, who was looking sulky. Sakura and Hinata, with Naruto and Sasuke, sneaking up on Haku with a very pink kimono in order to force him to wear it. All of them sitting around telling and retelling everything that had happened, laughing at their success, and not quite sure if it was real, or just a dream. All of them had gorged themselves on their favorite foods, and Sasuke was still eating a tomato when the group finally began to talk about serious matters. What do you think that Kakashi meant when he said that he would see us at the exams? Hinata asked, thoughtfully. I wish that we had looked at the letter. Me too, Sakura moaned. Naruto, why didn't you? Because Hentai-sensei would have known, Sai said, applying his own nickname for Kakashi, based off of his love for Ika Ika. He's considered one of Konoha's best ninja, you know. Sakura muttered something inaudible that sounded like, he still should have looked at it. I didn't want to push anything, Naruto said. I think we can trust him not to reveal who we are to Danza though. He knew who I was from the beginning, and he didn't do anything. Yeah, but... Neji, always suspicious, began. Besides, there are more important things to discuss. Naruto turned to Haku. What's with Zabuza? Haku looked a little embarrassed. Well, I didn't think that he would cause any harm. We weren't enemies anymore. What do you mean? For all we know, he's going to kill us. Sakura said. Haku looked even more embarrassed. Then again. Kimimaro said, a bit of a smirk on his face, he owes us. Naruto grinned a little. Ninja, being solders that, ideally, had no feelings towards their opponents other than the fact that they had to kill or be killed, had rules about how to act. This was especially true of missing nin or unaffiliated ones. If there was a chance for both of them to live, without jeopardizing the mission, it was always preferable. If the winner had to lie or pull a few strings for the sake of the loser owed the winner, and the winner could recall that debt whenever they wanted. But we don't know if he's sane enough to follow the rules, Sasuke pointed out, taking a bite of his tomato. When Kimimaro and I fought him, the only thing I got from him was that he really liked to fight. The more blood the better. What is it with Kirinin and blood? Hinata sighed. It's trait that all of them seem to share, isn't it? Sai agreed. They also really like to call themselves demons, Naruto pointed out. Zabuza, demon of the mist. The demon brothers, who were kind of pathetic. Kisame, doesn't his name mean demon shark or something? You can see where he got the name, Sasuke muttered. His mother named him very appropriately, Gaara nodded. I hope we never have to go against him, Haku said. There's something about his blue skin that's always disturbed me a little. Anyways, Neji said, back to the topic. Zabuza, did you have any other reasons other than a possible favor? Haku nodded. I felt that Isarabi-chan, she was Zabuza's assistant, should talk to him a little. She is something like us, but I don't think I should say unless she lets me, or shows you herself if we meet again. Zabuza said that he knew someone who could help her, but he might have been lying. I wanted to give her a chance to talk to him without someone else around. Sai nodded. I guess that's all right, Neji said grudgingly. He did call the fight to an end. I guess there really isn't much else to say, Gaara shrugged. We'll find out what happens. By the way, we're going home, right? You mean Ero Senin's place? Naruto asked. Yeah, I thought that would be the best idea. What are we going to tell Tsunade-san? Sai asked. Everyone looked at one another. That is going to take some fast talking, Sakura said thoughtfully. Sasuke is not eligible for the job. Thank goodness, Sasuke muttered. I really don't like being thrown through a wall, or given ninja puffs 3 meals a day. What is it with you and that stupid cereal? Niji sighed. I'll talk to Baa-chan, Naruto cut in, or Hinata or Sakura. I don't think that any of the rest of us will be able sweet talk her enough. Eventually, I think she's going to find out. Would it be worse for us to be there or out on a mission? Sai said thoughtfully. You know. Kimimaro said just as thoughtfully, I can't really say, they both have some disadvantages. At any rate, Hinata said, breaking up the conversation, which seemed to be on the verge of turning into nonsense, we should get some sleep. We're going to be traveling all day tomorrow. Naruto sent her a grateful look. Since the inn was supposed to be abandoned, it didn't take much to turn out the lights. There was no one around that any of them had been able to sense, and places like this were the best places to go when you didn't want attention. Water Country was full of inns and even towns that had been abandoned or everyone had been killed. Since the country was at constant civil war, and the Mizukage kept changing, things were always like this. Naruto had a feeling that things were probably worse in Earth County at the moment. He wondered just where they would go next. Maybe it would have something to do with the Chunin exam the way that Kakashi had said. It was somewhere around midnight when Naruto woke up. He was sleeping in the main room with the others. Sakura and Hinata hadn't been too keen on sleeping in a room by themselves that night. The inn was probably an easy place to break into, and judging that Kimimaro was in the same area, he probably would have done his best to freak them out. There were some people who were simply born for their Kekkei Genkai, and in Naruto's opinion, Kimimaro was one of those people. At first, Naruto wasn't sure what had woken him up, and looked over at Gaara, who was sitting up in the meditating pose that he usually took. Gaara was always the one on watch since he didn't sleep anyways. He would meditate, read, or, if he was inspired, make sand sculptures. Naruto had even once found him attempting to write a book. He had given that up since, according to him, nothing good came to him. Sai said that it was because of when he had read Jiraiya's books, he had been traumatized. Gaara didn't exactly disagree. Naruto sat up and looked over at Gaara. Gaara's eyes opened. Something woke me up, Naruto told him. Me too, Sasuke's tired, somewhat crabby voice muttered, I swear if it's a bandit, I'm going to kill them. It's very bad to be bad-tempered when you just wake up, Sai said. If you're about to make some nasty, crude reference, Sasuke muttered, then I will remind everyone of your old obsession with certain things. I'd rather you didn't. Then shut up. Hinata shook her head, both of you, this isn't the time, she said softly but firmly, we need to prepare for our guests. Sakura smirked, that's right, where are your manners? The rest, even Haku, seemed amused by this. Let's get everything ready for them, Haku said. Getting ready for them meant setting up a great deal of traps that would be set off on a moment's notice. Everyone in position, sitting by the relit fire, Naruto vaguely realized that they were still in their Hakumei uniforms, but he didn't really think too hard about it. They waited in total silence for what felt like at least an hour, but was probably only about 15 minutes. Hinata and Niji had both activated their Byakugans, but they couldn't see more than the fact that there were two people coming, and they were both doing their best to hide their chakra signatures. Naruto heard the steps of someone at the door to the inn, and he waited for the door to open suddenly. He was a little surprised when the door was thrown open violently to reveal two figures. Zabuza stared at the group of children, the oldest of which was 15, for a moment in total silence. Naruto didn't know what he had been expecting, but it probably wasn't to find out that Hakumei were a group of kids. Zabuza stared for a while longer and finally a reaction came. He started laughing. Hard. Sharinon Kakashi and I both had to really work to fight a bunch of kids. He howled between snickers, and here I was thinking that I would find a group of missing nin. Yeah, we're kids, Sasuke grumbled. Zabuza stopped laughing rather abruptly, and looked over each of the members, hard. You're not from a village, there was no question in his words. I wondered why I couldn't place your fighting style. It was slightly like Konoha's before its reform, but not quite. There were parts from Kiri and Suna as well. I'm sure you kids have a fascinating life story that I'm not going to get out of you. What do you want, Zabuza? Naruto asked, ready to unleash the first wave of traps if he even breathed wrong. Is it such a crime to be interested in just what my saviors want from me? Zabuza said with mock pain in his voice. Also, I wanted to see you again, a soft voice murmured. Isaribi slowly stepped out from behind Zabuza, her face bandaged and her head down. Naruto noticed that Haku looked rather happy to see her. I've spoken to Zabuza-san about. Isaribi trailed off, looking at the others. My problem, do you think that this Tsunade could help me? If anyone could, Haku said with complete confidence. He looked over at Zabuza. Who were you talking about? Zabuza looked away, and Naruto couldn't tell if he was embarrassed or simply annoyed that he had to answer the question. A woman I know from Kiri, she and I had an agreement with one another, but as a missing nin, I can't get near her. Well, at least we know that you weren't lying. Naruto said. I know about Tsunade. Zabuza's voice was suspicious, but why would she do anything for you? Let's just say that we know each other, Sakura told him. I would like to meet her as soon as possible. Isaribi told them. And I'd like to get rid of this little debt, Zabuza snarled. Well, we don't have a job at the moment, Sai said, false smile in place, so you're going to have to wait. Zabuza growled a little at this statement. The last thing that he apparently wanted to do was wait for them to get a job. We are going to see Tsunade in the morning though, Hinata said, speaking for the first time. Isaribi looked hopefully at Zabuza. Can we travel with them? She asked. Zabuza looked annoyed. Apparently he wanted them to give him a job and be done with it. Fine, he said shortly, at least if I hang around, I might be able to get this job over with. Traveling with Zabuza and Isaribi was not really something that Naruto found fun. For one thing, Zabuza was always growling, glaring, or seemed like he had a liver complaint, unless someone was talking about his sword, which he seemed to have some sort of obsession with. Naruto had already heard more about its care and maintenance than he had ever really wanted to in his entire life. Sasuke seemed vaguely interested, but thought that Zabuza's sword was too big for him to ever really want. Isaribi was quiet. Very quiet. She seemed to think that everyone might just be against her, and Haku kept giving her strange looks like he wanted to talk to her about something. Once Naruto had caught her staring at him, and he had walked over and asked what was wrong. You know about Haku's Kekii Genkai, she said, starting the conversation very bluntly. Yeah, I figured it out after I met him, Naruto told her, cool ability, too. I wish I had a Kekii Genkai. All I have is Fuzzy Wuzzy. What? Naruto remembered who he was talking to very quickly and shook his head, don't worry about it. Naruto had grown rather complacent about talking about the Kyuubi. When he was 9 he had worked up the courage to tell the rest of Hakumei about it. Sasuke and Sakura chased him all around Jiraiya's, angry that he hadn't trusted them. Haku had been extremely understanding, since in his mind, Naruto was hiding something much more revolting than a Kekii Genkai. Hinata had sat looking at him with a look that made him rather uncomfortable. It was like she suddenly completely understood something. Niji had seemed completely unaffected, and when asked why he wasn't mad, had said that he had guessed since he had seen red chakra coming out of him once. Gaara repeated that he had a demon inside of him rather calmly, and for the first time, everyone believed him. Kimimaro had said that he really didn't care just what they had been made to contain, he knew a demon when he saw one, his family being prime examples, and he knew Naruto and Gaara were anything but demons. After that, Naruto had grown rather comfortable with occasionally complaining about Kyuubi, and he bestowed upon it the affectionate nickname of Fuzzy Wuzzy. He also named the Shikaka Sandy Wandi. Gaara informed him that Shikaka was not amused and was screaming about eating him. Naruto told him to tell Shikaka that Kyuubi already had probably called first dibs. Naruto hadn't actually spoken to the thing since that one time when he was 7. Sasuke, Hinata, Niji, and Kimimaro also have Kekii Genkai. It's pretty common in this group, Naruto continued as if nothing had happened. Oh, so because they outnumber you, you allow them? Isaribi asked. What? Naruto cocked his head a little, no. Where I was born, having a Kekii Genkai is a really good thing. But that doesn't matter anyways. We hang around each other, well, I guess it's cause we like each other and we're stronger around each other. Haku says that we're his precious people, and I guess that goes for all of us. I never really thought about it too much. Isaribi was completely silent, but then spoke again. Haku said that you all have suffered a lot before you met one another. Why didn't you go on your own if you knew that trusting people only led to betrayal? Well, I guess that, we were lucky. Niji was born into the branch house of his family and was treated kind of like a slave, but he gained real family when Hinata, who's his cousin even though she calls him her brother, stood up for him. They were both disowned. Sasuke was ignored and pushed aside in favor of his older brother, who seems to be the only one who actually liked him. He ran away. Sakura just was at the wrong place at the right time and saw something she shouldn't have and had to come with us. Sigh, he's an orphan who was recruited by a psychopath's army. Someone he thought of as a brother died and he ran into us when he was trying to clear his head. I was born on the same day that a monster attacked our village and killed a lot of people, and no one could look at me without seeing family and friends who were killed. I wasn't really Mr. Popular. Gaara's mom died giving birth to him, and because of his powers, his father and uncle tried to kill him. Kimimaro was locked up in a little underground room because his Kekii Genkai had manifested itself, until we met him, and you probably know about Haku. Tsunade says that misery is magnetically attracted to more misery, and we learned to depend on one another to survive. You are lucky, Isaribi said, then after a moment asked, did Haku tell you what happened to me? No, he said that was up to you, Naruto said lightly. Isaribi had seemed surprised at Naruto's words. Oh, I thought that he would tell you. Well, it's a bit different than usual, Naruto admitted. Isaribi had said nothing after that. She had just ducked her head and started walking again. She hadn't said much of anything to anyone else after that. Sakura had tried to get her into a conversation, but as of yet, nothing had worked. Finally, they were back at what Naruto saw as Jiraiya's mountain. He had sent a toad ahead of them to tell them they were coming. Naruto was still trying to figure out what a good excuse would be when they reached the mansion. Oi, Gaki, you said that this guy was a hermit, Zabuza said looking at Naruto suspiciously. What kinda hermit lives in a place like this? Ero Sennin, Naruto replied shortly. Jiraiya-sensei's not really much of a hermit, Niji supplied. I think he just likes to have some ornate place where no one can get at him, where he can write his trash. Further conversation was interrupted by the door opening and Tsunade walking out, arms folded and a very dark glare on her face. Hiya, Baa-chan. Naruto said with a very large whiskered grin. Guess what? Tsunade's glare intensified. We're back. Naruto continued in the same obliviously cheerful tone. We got bored with chasing cats around. Did you miss us? Chasing cats? Tsunade said in a calm voice that set the hair at the back of Naruto's neck rising. That's funny, I heard that you were beating up mercenaries, meeting with Konoha, delivering secret messages, and oh, did you know that there are plans in Wave to build a statue of you as well as christen that bridge in your honor? Naruto blinked. This was really, really bad. And look, Tsunade said, her eyes sliding over to Zabuza, you brought a friend, a missing nin who was presumed dead by any chance. Yes. Sakura said in a small voice that it was his idea. 8 voices spoke in unison, pointing at Haku. I don't care whose brilliant idea this was, she said in the same deadly voice, we will discuss this at length at a later date. At present, you have a costumer. What? Kimimaro asked, totally taken aback. We didn't tell anyone about this place. Gaara exclaimed, his black-rimmed eyes widening. No, Tsunade agreed, if you had, your ancestors would be feeling the pain that I would inflict upon you. This person is Jiraiya's contact from Grass. Jiraiya brought him here. You too, she suddenly barked, looking at Zabuza and Isaribi, what do you want? I want help, Isaribi muttered softly. Haku, he told me that you might be able to help me. I just want to get my debt paid off as soon as possible, Zabuza grumbled. The fact that the girl wanted to come too is her business. Tsunade ignored Zabuza's statement and walked over to Isaribi and leaned a little over her. She looked at the bandage on her face and slowly peeked under it. She snapped the bandage back in place immediately after that. Who never mind, Tsunade said, her tone had changed to a business-like one. I won't embarrass you. I don't know who did this, and I don't really care. Treatment may take a long time, and I can't guarantee anything, but I'll do my best. How much do you need? Isaribi asked. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. For this? Nothing. This is interesting enough to be payment in and of itself. Naruto knew better. He had never seen Tsunade actually accept payment from anyone, even though hundreds of people came to see her all the time it seemed. They would have all kinds of strange things, and she would tell them that if they let her use them to help train her assistants, they wouldn't have to pay. Naruto had the feeling that she simply refused to take money from people who needed to be healed. It was too bad that made her an even more aggressive gambler. Alright, Fox Face, you and the others better get in there and talk to Jiraiya and the costumer. I swear that you will regret not telling me about what was really going on in Wave. Just you wait until he's gone. There were some nervous looks exchanged. Ensai raised a hand. Should we wear our masks? He asked. No, the client has been told of your real ages, Tsunade told them. Not wanting to try the woman's patience anymore, and hoping that she would soon become so preoccupied with Isaribi she would forget all about their, leaving out certain bits of information, they all slipped into the house with Zabuza following. They entered Jiraiya's sitting room to find that Jiraiya himself was sitting comfortably talking with a tall, nervous-looking man. He was about medium height with dark hair that almost looked green in certain lights and was wearing the standard Chiryunin or Hornin uniform. The Hittite on his forehead had the symbol of Kyuzagakuer, and the way that he held himself showed that he was probably a fairly important grass nin. Jiraiya grinned when he saw them. Well, speak of the devils, he said, and the guest turned around to look at them. His eyes got very wide when he saw Zabuza, and he gave Naruto a look that showed that he would be explaining just what the missing nin was doing with them. This is Hakumei, Jiraiya said, Shibuya no Naruto, Arashi no Sasuke, Nishoku no Sakura, Jeshoku no Hinata, Shinen no Sai, Raisin no Niji, Hara no Haku, Sabaku no Gara, and Haka no Kimimaro. Everyone, this is Kita Hideki. He's an acquaintance from Kyuzagakuer who came to me with a bit of a problem that I told him you could help him with. What's the problem? Niji asked. Hideki cleared his throat a little. Is the man with you trustworthy? At the moment. Naruto said, I think so. Later? I really have no idea. I can be paid to keep my mouth shut, Zabuza supplied. This didn't seem to reassure Hideki all that much. He won't tell. Hinata promised, smiling a little. I can promise that he won't. Sakura, who stood next to Zabuza, muttered something, and Zabuza turned his head very quickly to where Hinata stood. She can do that? He asked in a hushed tone. Sakura nodded. I'll keep my mouth shut, Zabuza said, eyeing Hinata with a sort of surprised respect. Hideki glanced at Sakura and Hinata, but at a nod from Jiraiya he began to speak again. As I'm sure you already know, the Chiryunin exams are in Konoha this time, and they're beginning very soon. Kusa is a small village, and since it borders Konoha and we don't have a cage ourselves, we depend on Konoha's goodwill. Since the Godame Hokage, Danzu, took control, we have been even more worried about our position with Konoha. Since we are ruled solely by the Grass Daimyo, we know some things that some ninja who actually have a cage don't. The Fire Daimyo doesn't really know that much about what's happening and why. He's losing power rapidly and is becoming nothing more than a puppet. He knows that IWA attacked them and killed the Sandaime, but he's being pressured into giving more and more power to Danzu. He would be no help to us if Konoha decided to attack us. As such, everything that we do towards Konoha is done with careful consideration, including sending at least one team of Gen in every Chiryunin exam. We sent a team this time, but around halfway there, communication stopped abruptly. We fear the absolute worst. If they do not appear to take the exam, then we may be attacked for slighting them. I see, Naruto nodded, and you need us to enter the exams under the guise of Grass Nin. Hideki explained, we will provide all the necessary paperwork, passports, and false identities. All you 9 have to do is claim to be Grass Genin and compete in the exams. As there are 9 of you, you are able to go in the traditional groups of 3. I would ask that you try to win, and would pay extra should you get promoted to Chiryunin. If that happens, Kusa would appear to have power and might not be so easily attacked. Is there anything else? Naruto asked. Yes, if you can, attempt to find out what happened to the team that we sent out. Someone might have survived or the Jounin might have been wounded, Hideki told them. All right, Kimimaro nodded, that shouldn't be too much of a problem. We will keep on the lookout and even check the surrounding forest for any traces. Oh, and one more thing, Hideki looked a little nervous. We don't have a Jounin who is able to act as a sensei to all three false teams. It would be acceptable for us to send only one, but the only one who would have been able to was wounded 2 days ago and is still in the hospital. Is it possible that you would know someone who could pose as a Jounin? Suzuki looked at Jiraiya. Oh, no, Jiraiya said, holding up his hands, I've got a lot of other things to prepare for, and I can't be playing babysitter. And don't bother to ask Tsunade. We wouldn't have, Gaara said, she has a new patient that seems like she might take some time. Then who should we use? Niji said thoughtfully. Slowly, one by one, they all turned to look at Zabuza. That could work, Sai said, all he would have to do is take off his mask and no one would be able to know who he was. Zabuza seemed to realize just what they meant and backed up a step. Oh, no, he said, no way. You said that you wanted to pay your debt, Suzuki reminded him. Yeah, Zabuza said, but I meant to help you kill someone, not pretend to be your sensei. Well, really, Haku said thoughtfully, this is better. It's longer, but you don't have to do anything other than stand around, Gaara nodded, we do all the real work. There wouldn't even be all that much that he'd need to do to look different, Sakura said thoughtfully, take off the face mask, maybe change the hair color a little, make it look like that sword's not there, it's a little recognizable. Would you not talk about this like I'm not here? Zabuza snarled, I haven't even agreed to go. Suzuki muttered something under his breath that sounded like, and you have a choice. Sai coughed a little. Laugh it up. Zabuza growled at Sai, who was unmistakably snickering. We need to think of a name for him, Haku pointed out. How about Honda-sensei, Kimimaro suggested, it's a common enough name. What makes you think that I'm even going to come? Zabuza asked angrily. You did say that you wanted to pay off your debt to us as soon as you could, Gaara pointed out. By pretending to be our sensei, you'll pay off your debt, Hinata said, besides, I doubt that Isaribi will be very useful while Tsunade is working with her. Tsunade is very dedicated once she decides that she's interested in something. I don't think you'll be able to get your assistant back for a while. And although you pretend to care nothing for her, you were intending on helping here, therefore, you have some kind of attachment. Zabuza looked like he wanted to disagree, but hadn't figured out how to do it convincingly. If I pretend to be your babysitter for this exam, my debt's paid. He finally said. Yep, Naruto said brightly. And I never have to see you Hellions again. Yes, Sai nodded. I'll do it. He still hasn't figured out that he didn't have a choice, has he? Suzuki hissed to Naruto. Sai snickered again. Urusai. Hideki-san, Naruto said over the cursing of Zabuza, Hakumei accepts this mission. Naruto sat down in his usual place at the table, looking at Jiraiya. Niji was keeping an eye on Hideki and Zabuza, and Haku was making sure that Niji stayed awake by making the room extremely cold when he started to look like he was thinking of sneaking a nap. Everyone else was present, even Tsunade, who had only come because Isaribi needed to sleep. The lights were low in the little room, one of Jiraiya's many secret rooms, only big enough for the table and chairs. The man was a bit of an enigma. He had one of the most advanced information systems in the world, his travels and research were mostly fronts in order for him to contact people. His house was riddled with trapdoors, secret passages, rooms, and panels. Even some of the books in his library were written in code. Naruto, as Jiraiya's apprentice, had more access to this information than most people, other than Tsunade, but even he didn't know everything that old man knew. Sometimes Naruto thought that Jiraiya might have really been the most powerful ninja in the world, but when he was being beat up by an angry Tsunade, or giggling like a little girl over something that Naruto really didn't want to know about, he wondered just how fine the line between genius and insanity really was. So, is there anything you need to tell us? Naruto asked in a would-be innocent way. Jiraiya leaned against the table and rested his elbows on it while he put his chin on the laced fingers of his hands. Did you give Kakashi the letter? He asked. Tsunade glared over at him, but didn't say anything. Yes, he said that he was prepared to meet you at the exams, Naruto reported. Excellent, he said, everything's going according to plan. Even Tsunade smiled a little. What plan is this? Hinata asked. Even though it was without my permission, you did very well in Wave, Tsunade began, well enough, I think, to participate in this mission. Before I begin, I have to tell you that if we were a village, this would be classified as an A, possibly S rank, mission. So tell us, Sasuke said leaning forwards, I'm interested. S rank, Sakura breathed with a little bit of awe in her voice. You're sure that we're ready? Hinata asked. You're going to return to Konoha, Jiraiya told them, under the disguise that Hideki has provided us with. You will participate in the exams and appear to be normal genin, but while you are there, you will get in contact with Kakashi's group, they call themselves Kainen, and they've been told to be on the lookout for you. You will act as my representatives until Tsunade and I arrive. And what's the mission? Kimimaro was leaning forward so much that Naruto was amazed that he hadn't fallen out of his chair by this time. This is an assassination mission, Tsunade said, its official name is Requiem. Who's the target? Sasuke asked, his eyes almost gleaming, with anticipation and hope. The target very rarely, almost never, comes out in public, Jiraiya continued, acting like he hadn't heard Sasuke's question. During the few speeches that he makes yearly, he's so heavily guarded by Root that it would be impossible to reach him, but during the Chunin exams, he will have to appear in public and Root will be busy keeping tabs on the participants. He will be guarded by Jounin for the first time in almost 5 years, and he himself will have to be unarmed, or at least sparingly armed, lest he draw attention to himself. I believe that the victim has grown slightly complacent. What will our job be specifically? Naruto asked. To make it to the final round, and when the signal is given, to help Kainen dispose of the Root Ninja and any other threats. Tsunade and I will dispose of the target. We both feel as if it is our duty to Sarutobi-sensei to perform this ourselves. Jiraiya's eyes were rather cold as he said this. We will not allow ourselves to be recognized, and after Danzo is dead, we will reappear in Konoha, ready to defend it against any enemies who may attack it in its weakness. After things have stabilized, you will appear, as your true selves, hidden away by us since we found you, and you will reveal the true story behind the assassination by IWA. People won't believe you at first, but with the help of Kainen, who have some rather powerful members, they should grow to believe you. Kumo will probably be happy to sue for peace, it lost a lot when it sided with IWA and there are plenty of hostages still in Konoha. Kiri is still recovering, so I doubt there will be much trouble from it, and Suna is slightly afraid of us. There's a lot of room for error, Hinata pointed out. Yes, Tsunade agreed, but I suppose that we have to take a chance. Besides, Danzo is expecting a large number of Root recruits to enter the main force next year. This may be the only time that this is possible. Hinata still looked worried, but the rest, even Gaara and Kimimaro who had nothing to do with Konoha, were looking excited. Naruto felt his heart pounding in his chest. He was going back. The first time it was mentioned, Naruto had been almost numb to the idea, but suddenly it was real. Memories sprang to mind and Naruto wondered for the millionth time how much had changed. He was going to find out, he realized. He was going to see what had happened to everyone. This had to have been a really big deal for the others too. Sasuke was going to see his family again, and Naruto hoped that he could talk to his brother a little. Sakura would see her parents again, and Neji and Hinata might see family members. They were coming back, and they were going to get revenge. When do we leave? Naruto asked. In an unknown location, carefully hidden from the rest of the world, a figure sat reading through files. He would glance over each once, write down the names and their abilities, and go on to the next one. The others of his group considered him slightly strange to volunteer to do this job, which they dreaded, but left him alone. They were all somewhat disconcerted by the man, though they never would have admitted it. He picked up another file and stopped, staring at the picture and looking at the name. A small smile formed on his mouth, and for a moment triumph appeared in his eyes. I've found you. In another location, another man waited impatiently, hooded and cloaked, for the spy he knew was coming. He was irritated that he had to come to this forest location, and the perpetual headache that he had was worse today than usual. He snarled a little but composed himself. His spy would do best to appear soon if he valued his life. He wasn't that important, and truthfully, the man had always had a suspicion that his spy wasn't as loyal as he pretended to be. His plans had to be accomplished now. Some part of his mind, probably where the headache came from, seemed to be asking why it was so necessary, but the man shoved the thoughts aside. It had to be accomplished as soon as possible. It was his purpose. The man sensed the presence of someone coming closer and waited. A few minutes later, a younger man was kneeling before the first. "My lord, all preparations have been made," the newcomer said softly. "Everything will be ready by the time you have requested." "And our allies?" The man smirked. "Fools. They haven't even figured out what's happened. I just had to stroke their egos a little." The newcomer nodded once. "Are there any other orders?" he asked in a completely neutral voice. "Proceed as planned. Make sure that any interference is dealt with in a way that looks accidental." "Hi," the newcomer said. "Don't disappoint me," the man cautioned. "I will come soon, and when I do, I wish to see that nothing has been left unaccounted for. Everything has been predicted, victory is assured." The man smirked, ignoring the fact that the headache was worse than ever. "Perfect." Another man sat at his desk staring at the window of his office as he waited for someone he knew would come. Every one of his co-workers was under the impression that he was simply working late. He smiled coldly, so different from how he had before the incident, before he had lost his faith, and before his heart had all but turned to stone. Other than to the few people he actually trusted now. He would never forgive that man. "You're still here?" an amused feminine voice asked. "I said I would be," the man responded. "Yeah, but I guess I didn't really believe you," the woman who had appeared shrugged. "Most people would have left by this time. He's just got back. I swear if he was any slower about it he'd be going backwards," and handed in his report. "We've got word to get ready. They're coming." The man nodded. "Excellent." The woman cocked her head. "You know, I think I liked you better when you were a softie. Now you remind me too much of me." "I still like my job and the people in our organization," the man said defensively, his entire manner changing to a more passively gentle one. "I just don't like one person." "Yeah, but now you've got split personalities, and it's deeply freaky," the woman shook her head. "Anyways, we've got lots of work to do if we're going to get this right. Oh, we also have some people who will be attending the exams. He said that you'll know them when you see them. Can't imagine what that twit is talking about though. I think he's amused about something." The man laughed, but his manner went cold immediately. "I'll keep my eye out." "You do that," the woman said, looking like she was about to leave. "Oh, and get some rest, you look like something sensei dragged in." "I know, I will," the man said. "I'll sleep a lot better now." The woman disappeared and the man looked out the window again. Everything was perfect. The man in the building he was looking at had no idea what was about to unfold right under his feet. "You'll pay," the man thought. "You'll pay for turning him into an excuse for going to war, and never really looking for them and not really caring what happened. I won't forgive you. I won't let go until I know what happened to them, to him." Chapter 14, Part 2, Return. The village of Konoha didn't look like it had changed all that much on the outside from the day, 5 years ago, when 6 frightened children escaped in the dead of night. The large, imposing gates still stood, and the same symbols were painted on them. The surrounding forest didn't seem even slightly different, but then again, Naruto hadn't really had that much time to see them. Naruto readjusted his new Kusa Hittite for the 100th time nervously. He was not at all used to the weight and it had a way of wanting to slide down his face. He was wearing a grayish-blue jacket over a dark orange shirt, and dark pants along with black combat sandals. All of these clothes had been assigned to him by the client, along with everyone else's. Naruto wished he could have used a genjutsu to cover up his whiskers, but had already decided to tell anyone who stared at them that they were tattoos. It had been a very long time since he had left, and few people had really looked at him. They were too busy devotedly ignoring him. Sasuke wore his Hittite the same way as Naruto, and had found a pair of dark pants and a navy turtleneck shirt to wear. He had bandages along his arms, but had, thankfully, not found any arm warmers. He seemed pleased that this time their disguise was as a real ninja. He didn't have to worry about a disguise. As long as he didn't activate the Sharingan in the middle of a battle, most people would just assume that he was related to Sai. Kimimaro was wearing his hitayite around his neck. He was wearing a loose white shirt and dark blue pants. Looser clothing made it easier for him to use his Kekkei Genkai, and he hadn't bothered to hide much of anything. No one would have a clue who he was, even if he took out his whole skeleton. Hinata had placed the Genjusta that made her eyes look brown in place about 3 hours back. Her hitayite was around her neck and she was wearing a white sleeveless shirt with long tan shorts. Her arms and legs were bound by bandages and the back of her shorts was a long white square of fabric that went down to her ankles. Naruto thought that it was kind of cool, in a very odd way. Sakura had found a red battle kimono with a gold flame pattern that she had immediately picked out. She was proudly wearing her hitayite as a headband, to show off her forehead. Naruto had told her not to be so obvious, people might remember her, but Sakura had ignored him and said that she wouldn't jeopardize the mission. Gaara was still wearing his gourd, and he had found a red and gray coat to wear over black pants that made him look fairly intimidating. Then again, Gaara had a knack for looking intimidating when he wanted to. He had wrapped his hitayite around his gourd, but it was almost impossible to see. Niji was wearing close to the same off-white shirt and brown pants that he had worn in Wave. Actually, he and Sai were the only ones who had done that. He wore his hitayite on his forehead, but didn't really seem to care too much about where it would go, since, according to him, they would have to get rid of them anyway. Naruto had to admit that he really did have a good point. Sai was still in his black outfit. He really seemed to like it, and due to either lack of originality or lack of caring, his hitayite was also on his forehead. Haku was wearing a teal-colored robe, over a brown sweater with a lighter brown sash as a belt. His pants, which seemed to be the same color and material as the sweater, went down past his knees. His hair was tied back into a bun, covered by a piece of cloth, and tied with a piece of teal-colored rope, and he still looked like he really could have passed for a girl. Naruto said nothing about this, since it was a fairly touchy subject. Zabuza was almost completely unrecognizable. It was amazing just what wearing the traditional Jounin uniform, taking off his face mask, and hiding his sword could do. He wasn't all happy with the changes or his new name, but he was willing to put up with it, if only to avoid ever owing Hakumei anything in the future. The gates to Konoha were closed, which was strange. Naruto couldn't remember a single time when the gates had been closed past nightfall. Naruto remembered Iruka-sensei had once told him about the gates only being closed when there was an attack or a threat, and worry began to rise in him. Had they already been found out? There were a large group of people waiting outside the gate, looking like they had spent the night there. Hakumei edged up close to a trio about their age, who were hanging around. It was comprised of one boy and 2 girls, which was a rarity in the ninja world, and the 3 turned around to look at them as they approached. Chunin exams. The boy, who was wearing a black suit, with a cat-eared hood and what looked like war paint on his face. Yeah, Kimimaro said. Well, that makes all of us, a girl wearing a light purplish dress, what looked like 4 pigtails in her blonde hair, and something that looked kind of like a club, but might not be grumbled, looking cross. There have been people waiting here since yesterday. They only open the gates for about 4 hours, and if you didn't happen to get there in time, you wait. For the first time she looked them over with interest. You're Grass Nin? She asked in a mildly interested, but mildly condescending tone. Yeah, Sakura said, looking like she was trying not to take an instant dislike to the girl. I'm Emi. I'm Tamari, the girl said. This is my little brother Kankuro and Matsuri. We're from Suna. The other girl, with brown hair that hung limply to her shoulders, bowed a little. She was wearing a green skirt and a dark shirt that showed her shoulders. On the whole, Naruto didn't think that he had met a more insecure-looking person unless it was Hinata before she had become a member of Hakumei. It's nice to meet you, she said shyly. Naruto noticed Gaara's eyes widened just a little. That made sense, he probably would know them from his childhood. They all introduced themselves, mostly talking out of boredom and the common ground of all being foreign, young, and having their first exam. When will they be opening the doors? Hinata asked. Who knows? Kankuro shrugged and leaned forwards conspiratorially. I hear that they'll take you up to see their torture and interrogation specialist to make sure we're not spies before we get our passport into Konoha. Suzuki looked skeptical. If they did that, no one would sign up. Sai nodded. No one's that suicidal. Before Kankuro could say anything else, the gates opened to show an annoyed-looking Chiryunin with short, black hair that spiked a little at the back, dark eyes, and a perpetual frown. That's my cousin, Uchiha Hiro, Suzuki hissed to Naruto. All of you, show your identification, Hiro said, glaring around at them. If it is verified, you will be given a visa that always traverse within the civilian sector of Konoha. You all have a room at one of the inns here, and you will be permitted to look around the civilian sectors all you like until Chiryunin exam day, which is in 2 days from now. Naruto took in this information, feeling strange. They had never had permits or anything else like that before. While Naruto hadn't paid any more attention to Konoha's laws or rulings than any other 6-year-old, he had never heard of a civilian sector or anything else like what Hiro was talking about. This was all new to him. The check was highly humiliating. They were lined up, asked to produce their passports, and looked at suspiciously for about 3 minutes. Tamari was very impatient when Matsuri's turn came. Oh, come on, she grumbled, she's just here to fill out this team. How suspicious can she be? I mean, she's deathly afraid of weapons, squeamish, and can't manipulate chakra to save her life. Let's get a move on. Hiro gave her a bored look, and continued, moving slightly slower, probably just to spite her. When they left, Kankuro waved cheerfully at them and called, "We'll crush you in the exams," in the same way that most people would have said, "We'll see you in the exams." When he came to Hakumei, he kept them for at least 15 minutes because all 9 of them had no last names, and Zabuza, or Kenshin Honda, had to show a tremendous amount of proof of the fact that were orphans from Kusa. That Naruto was very glad that they were masquerading as Grassnin with Kusa's permission. If they didn't, they would have been caught before setting foot in the city. After an agonizing few minutes in which all of them were probably certain that they would be caught just because of their facial expressions, they were allowed into Konoha. Apparently everyone looked guilty when they were checked. Remember, stay in the civilian section, Hiro warned them. If you're caught in the ninja sector, you'll be dealt with as spies. Zabuza growled something under his breath that might have been, "And I'll use your intestines to strangle you," but might have also been, "Thank you, have a nice day." Naruto was betting on the first one. Hakumei was the last group to be accepted in, and the doors slammed shut behind them. For the first time in almost 6 years, Naruto looked at his hometown. At first, it didn't seem like much had changed. The Hokage building and monument were still in the same place, the buildings hadn't changed much, if at all, and the smell in the air was almost the same. But then Naruto realized just how much had really changed. Danzu's face now looked out from the Hokage monument, glaring at everyone with his one eye. Naruto noticed that all the ninja, including genin, were wearing the standard uniform, and Naruto wondered if the genin just wore normal clothes on missions or something, and he realized just how many Uchihas were hanging around. They were everywhere. Naruto recognized them by the crest at the back of their shirts, and the scowl on all of their faces. Not one of them looked younger than 20. Root seemed everywhere too. When Naruto was younger, it was really rare to actually see the Umbu when they were on duty. They prided themselves with never being seen, but Root was obvious, almost as if they were intimidating people. The civilians were different too. Naruto was used to looks of cold hatred or indifference, but this was nothing like those. The eyes of almost everyone who looked at them were filled with fear. They looked like they were afraid that Naruto would just go nuts and attack for no reason. Naruto found himself being jostled about by the crowd, and was so lost in his own thoughts, that he didn't notice that he was separated from the others until he had walked down several streets. Suzuki was also lost in his own thoughts as he walked. It was the first time that he had seen anyone from his large clan in a very long time, and for the first time it really occurred to him that he might see his family again. Yes, he had thought of that before, but the meaning and ramifications hadn't really come up until that moment. What would happen if he met his mother or Itachi? Suzuki was certain that either of them would recognize him. Itachi might not say anything. He had allowed them to escape and obviously hadn't told anyone, but his mother would want an explanation. He would have to avoid her. Sasuke looked up to ask Naruto a question, only to realize that he was alone. He muttered something that he had learned from Zabuza under his breath and tried to catch his bearings. The large building in front of him with the Uchiha crest on it made him know exactly where he was. Of course, without thinking, he had started walking towards one of the two places he was thinking about most. Sasuke knew that he should probably leave, but he found himself sitting on one of the benches facing the station. He hadn't seen it since what seemed like an eternity ago, when he had sprained his ankle training with Itachi. Now looking at it again, he had to smile a little at the memory. It had been a long time since he had hurt himself training. It had been even longer since he'd even seen his brother. He wondered if Itachi worked from the military police now, since the Umbu was gone. Maybe he would help them, but he probably shouldn't try to make contact with him. Sasuke stood up to head for the hotel, and then realized that Hiro, always trying to act cool and half the time forgetting important things, hadn't remembered to tell them where they were staying. Sasuke tried out a few creative new words that he had learned from Zabuza and started to think of all the hotels that he knew. "What are you doing here?" A female voice that sounded more than a little unfriendly asked. Sasuke looked up and almost allowed himself to start or look surprised. Uchiha Mikoto stood, watching him with a disdainful expression, carrying something that looked like it was someone's lunch. She looked a little older than Sasuke remembered, and the expression on her face shocked him the most. He had never seen his mother without a soft look in her eyes, but now they were like two pieces of obsidian, cold and completely uncaring. A horrible realization came to Sasuke: adults didn't usually change much over time. Their personalities were very set. His mother had probably always been like this to non-Uchihas. What was even worse was that she didn't recognize him. "Well?" Mikoto asked, narrowing her eyes. "I guess I got lost looking for the hotel," Sasuke managed out. "Let me see your passport," Mikoto commanded, walking up to him and holding out her hand expectantly. Sasuke took out his passport and handed it to her, feeling slightly sick. Mikoto looked at it almost as if looking to see a forgery. "I see, Masaru from Kusa," Mikoto said coldly, "you should have received a map indicating where to go. The hotel is in the center of the market. If you retrace your steps and go to the left, you will eventually reach the marketplace. The hotel has a large amount of balloons in the front and a sign welcoming the foreign exam participants." Sasuke couldn't help but hear the bite in her voice when she said foreign. "Thank you," Sasuke said, bowing politely, and wanting to throw up. "HN," was the only answer that Sasuke received. Mikoto watched Sasuke as he disappeared down the street, but turned around and didn't see him rush into some bushes and relieve his stomach of his breakfast. That was his family? Yes, he had been angry that they had ignored him, but showing them that they were wrong and eventually rejoining the clan had always been Sasuke's eventual plan. Now he didn't feel so sure. His mother's eyes were etched in his memory as being cold, and completely uncaring. "Aniki," Sasuke breathed, "are you the same?" Sasuke was sure of one thing: he didn't want to see anything more of his family until he had had time to think. Uchiha Fugaku had watched the boy for a while until his wife had appeared and shooed him off. He had been a grassnin with dark hair, and vaguely he realized that Sasuke would have been about his age now. Sasuke. That name brought up so much annoyance in him. He was the cause of Fugaku's dishonor, and even though Fugaku knew that it was stupid to blame a 6-year-old, who was probably dead now anyway, he couldn't help it. The night Sasuke left, his room had been clean, some clothes packed and money gone. The little brat had run away, only to get kidnapped by IWA, and Fugaku was short one son. While that was bad enough, it had not been total dishonor. That had come from his older son. Itachi was born calm. He had never cried, only making soft mewling noises when he was hungry, and had figured out how to talk much earlier than most other children. Fugaku had known a genius when he saw one, and he was thrilled to have one as his heir. He supposed that he had pushed Itachi a little too hard by sending him into that battle. Itachi stopped smiling almost completely after that. Before Sasuke was born, Itachi had not smiled at all. Sasuke. It was traditional for Uchiha brothers to be on bad terms with one another. Only the great Madara had ever seemed to get along with his brother, and that had probably been a ruse of some kind. Fugaku himself had to be restrained when his younger brother had been born, or he would have killed him. Fugaku had kept that in mind at Sasuke's birth, making sure that there were some of the older Uchiha there to keep the 5-year-old Itachi out of the room where Sasuke was born. After all, if he had almost killed his brother, Itachi might succeed. When he had taken his crying son from his wife, Fugaku had been disappointed that he had not been calm like Itachi had been, but reminded himself that it was rare enough to have one genius, and the boy was healthy. The shock was when someone carefully managed to take Sasuke away from him when he was thinking those things. Fugaku had turned around to see Itachi, who had somehow made it past all the guards, holding his new brother, looking like he was studying him, almost unsure of how to react. Some of his hair fell into Sasuke's face, and the infant began to try to eat it. Slowly, a smile formed on Itachi's face as he brushed the hair away, 2 fingers accidentally pressing against Sasuke's forehead. "Hello, Sasuke," Itachi said softly. Sasuke, as to be expected, said nothing. It was difficult to wrest Sasuke from his older brother's clutches, and after that, Itachi seemed to always be around Sasuke, even when they got older. Most of the time older siblings seemed to be allergic to their younger siblings, but Itachi seemed to take time out of his day to play with Sasuke. After a while, Fugaku began to realize that Sasuke was the only person in the family that Itachi actually seemed to have any feelings toward. He had accepted his arranged betrothal, and would hang around Shisui, but there was always a distance between him and anyone else. When Sasuke had been kidnapped, Itachi's only bond to the family had snapped, and Itachi had gone. Probably to look for Sasuke or take revenge on Iwa personally. Itachi had disappeared off the face of the earth, and it was all Sasuke's fault. Now Fugaku had no heir, and all attempts had been in vain. Actually, there had been no children born since Sasuke, and some of the lesser clans were starting to whisper about the Uchihas being cursed. The door opened and Mikoto came in carrying Fugaku's lunch. "You got rid of the grass genin?" he asked. "Yes," Mikoto said, "honestly, I don't know why Danzu-sama even allows them to come here. You've been working on that plan for 2 days now, haven't you?" 3. Fugaku grunted. "That would be unnecessary if there were no foreign genin permitted at our exam," Mikoto sniffed. "Yes, but we would never see what these genin, who might later become jounin, are capable of," Fugaku told her. "All of the work for this plan is nothing." Niji looked around for the others, but couldn't see any sign of them. Blasted crowds, he thought, they were probably completely separated now. What was more annoying was that the guard didn't seem to have the presence of mind to tell them where the hotel was, he was too busy intimidating them. Niji resisted the urge to use the Byakugan to see if he could find them. Anyone here would know that Kekii Genkai on site, and they would wonder just who he was, and ask questions that were better left unanswered. Niji looked around one final time and started to walk again. There was no way he would find anyone in this crowd, and perhaps if he found the hotel, the others would eventually find him. It took Niji about 3 turns into unfamiliar-looking places for him to realize that he was lost. Truthfully, it wasn't completely a strange thing. Niji and Hinata had seldom been allowed to leave the Hyuga compound when they were very young, and they had almost never been allowed to explore. While Naruto or Sakura would probably have a good memory of the place, and Sasuke might have some memories, he and Hinata would be lost. The place he was in wasn't anywhere near the Hyuga compound either. He was in a park or something like one, and as Niji looked around, he began to recognize the place. That playground, the bushes, they were taller now. This was the place where the Sandaime had been murdered. Niji was surprised that there hadn't been something to commemorate it. Niji looked around, this place had been a part of so many dreams and talks. It had changed his life. It was strange how now, it didn't look that different than the many other playgrounds he was used to. Niji noticed that there was someone else coming towards him, but paid no attention until he realized that whoever it was seemed to be about to attack him. They were running towards him, and had jumped in the air to land a kick. Niji jumped back, prepared to fight back, but all thoughts of defense stopped when he saw his attacker. It was easily the strangest person that he had ever seen. He was wearing what looked like a bright green jumpsuit of some material that did nothing to flatter him, and his hair was in a very shiny-looking bowl cut. What really caught Niji's attention were his eyes and eyebrows. Tsunade had always told them not to judge by appearance, but Niji decided that there were two options for this person: either he was the greatest genius he had ever seen for using such strange things to make people underestimate him, or he was completely insane. Enemy ninja, the person, Niji realized he was about Niji's age, said, striking a pose, "I will defend the city against your attack as the beautiful blue beast of Konoha." Niji wondered just what about this person was blue, or beautiful. "I'm here for the exams," Niji said in his talking to idiot's voice. "I'm not attacking Konoha yet." The green jumpsuit-clad boy began bowing from the waist repeatedly. "Gomenase, gomenase, gomenase," the boy said, bowing with every gomenase. "I had no idea that you were one of the participants in the Chiryunin exams. I simply saw you and the fact that you had a foreign Hittite, and I jumped to the wrong conclusion." "Well, mistakes happen," was all that Niji could think of saying. Such youthful words. The boy cried, "You inspire me. I will perform 300 push-ups." Niji once again wondered if this person was insane or a genius. "So I suppose I'll face you in the exams?" Niji asked. It looked like the boy would start crying. "Oh, Guy-sensei, you would be so proud." The boy cried, "To have a true ninja see me, a lowly civilian, as an equal. I, Rock Lee, declare you my friend and eternal rival. One day, when I am recognized as a ninja by Konoha, we will fight as other rivals have done before us. Tell me your name, O eternal rival." This was a turn of events that Niji had no anticipated or ever dreamed would happen. Lee had already embraced him, declaring some kind of friendship rivalry that sounded faintly disgusting and repeating his request for Niji's name. "I go by Haru," Niji told him, "just Haru, I'm an orphan." Lee leapt to embrace Niji again, but this time, he dodged. "Look, will you just tell me where to find that hotel where the Chiryunin exam participants are staying?" Niji asked, losing his cool. "Of course, Haru, my eternal rival," Lee crowed. Niji didn't know it then, but he had probably met his best friend. "Well, at least we didn't get separated from one another," Sakura signed. "I forgot how crowded Konoha was." "I didn't really know," Hinata admitted. "Do you know where we are?" "The marketplace," Sakura looked around. "My aunt always used to take me shopping here before." Sakura trailed off and looked at the ground. "Do you want to see them?" Hinata asked. "We could, and I'm sure we could do it without anyone seeing us." Sakura opened her mouth and closed it again, and she closed her eyes and sighed a little. "No," she said, "I don't think that I should. I want to see them again, when I can tell them everything, when they can know I'm their daughter, not when they don't even know me, and not when I'm, well." She pointed to her Hittite. Hinata nodded. "I understand," she said. "Don't worry. You'll see them again, and when you do it'll be when our problems are gone. You'll probably have to introduce him to them though." Hinata was smiling a little and Sakura blushed, glaring at her friend. "Emi. Rei." Both girls saw Niji coming towards them with the strangest looking person either girl had ever seen. "Ano, Haru, who's that?" Hinata asked, looking very unsure. "This is..." Niji began, looking like he was thinking about just how to explain this. "I am the beautiful blue beast of Konoha, Rock Lee," the decidedly green-clad boy said, grinning at Sakura, "and you, fair maiden, are the most beautiful woman that I have ever seen. It is a shame that you are a ninja from Kusa, and I a lowly civilian, for our love can never be." Sakura looked over at Niji at Hinata in a way that asked, "This is a human being, right?" and smiled a little nervously at Lee. "Well, I suppose there are other girls and other guys in the world," she said awkwardly. "Spoken like a true maiden in the springtime of youth," Lee shouted. "Does he do this often?" Hinata whispered to Niji. "Apparently, all the time," Niji hissed back. "Well, he's interesting," Hinata shrugged. "You're sure?" Sai asked, looking very interested. "It's been a while, you could be wrong." "I would know my own siblings," Gaara shook his head. "Those were them. I vaguely remember the girl, Matsuri. She was usually sitting alone like me, and the other kids teased her a lot. She left Suna before I left. I think her parents went out on an extended mission." "Your siblings didn't recognize you," Kimimaro pointed out. "Do you think that they were just hiding it?" My siblings and I didn't see each other too often, Gaara sighed. It's really unlikely that they would know me at all. I'm sorry, Shinta, Haku said quietly, it really must be hard for you to have to face them. When this is all over, I'm sure you'll have a chance to talk to them. You're all disgusting, you know that. Zabuza chipped in. Just because we don't attempt to disembowel one another at every opportunity doesn't make us disgusting, Sai pointed out, it makes us somewhat normal. It's unnatural. Zabuza growled. Not as unnatural as his lack of eyebrows. Kimimaro muttered under his breath, which caused a few giggles. Where are we anyway? Why do you think I know? Zabuza asked, sneering a little. Maybe Sasuke should hypnotize him before the exams, just so that he didn't end up starting a war between Kusa and Konoha. Didn't that guy give you a map? Gaara asked innocently. Zabuza blinked and searched his pockets. I'm going to kill him, Zabuza muttered. That would start a war, Haku pointed out. But it will make me feel so much better. Naruto tried to resist the pull on him, but failed miserably. The temptation was simply too much for him, the leader of Hakumei, to resist. It had been so long since he had been faced with such a hard thing, and it might jeopardize the mission, but Naruto just couldn't say no. Besides, he was sure that he had time. He entered Ichiraku Ramen. Pushing the flap open, Naruto noticed that the place seemed a little more run down than it had when he had last been there, but the smell was just as intoxicating as it was all those years ago. Hello, Naruto called, anyone here? Tuke, the old ramen chef's head appeared almost immediately. He took in Naruto's headband, but didn't say anything other than, you're a costumer. Yep, Naruto nodded, I want a double miso ramen. The works. Ayam, the assistant and daughter of the owner, poked her head out, and bit her lip. Tio-you-san. She hissed. Beggars can't be choosers, was the only reply. Naruto could tell that they had fallen on very hard times. Before, they had seemed so cheerful, but now, they looked like they just wanted him to pay and leave. When the steamy hot bowl was set in front of him, Naruto snapped his chopsticks apart reverently. At last, a bowl of Ichiraku ramen, not that awful pre-made junk. Naruto took a large bite and felt tears coming to his eyes. This is the best ramen in the history of ramen, he said, his eyes closed. He really should have paid more attention to the fact that that had been one of his oldest expressions and one that both were very familiar with. "Na. Are you?" Ayam began, her eyes wide. "Oh, yeah," Naruto said, smiling, "I didn't introduce myself, I'm Taiki, just Taiki, I'm an orphan from Kusa." "Taiki?" Tuki asked. "Oh, yes, Kakashi-san mentioned that he thought that you were Kusanin who would be coming for the exams." Naruto was really interested now. What was Kakashi doing, or was? Really? I thought that we had done a pretty good job, Naruto smiled. Further conversation was interrupted by the appearance of Sasuke. He must have seen the back of Naruto's shirt while he was passing by. Naruto cheerfully waved, but noticed that something was wrong. Sasuke's eyes were blank-looking, almost unseeing, and he looked even paler than he usually did. "Hey, Masaru, want some ramen?" Naruto asked. "Not right now," was all that Naruto could get out of Sasuke. "Must be tired." He usually loves places like this, he told Tuki and Ayam over Sasuke's glare. "Yo, old man," Naruto was on guard the instant that he heard Kiba's voice, "we got your stupid deliveries done. Pay up." "Kiba, you should be more polite, Shino." "Oh, things were just getting better, weren't they? At least pretend that you have dignity." Sasuke looked up and his eyes narrowed to slits. "Hey, wait," Kiba noticed Naruto and Sasuke, "what the heck are you doing here?" "Eating ramen," Naruto answered. "And entering the exams," Sasuke added, his eyes on Yumi. "So, you're a ninja," Yumi said, her gaze level. "It's good to see you both again in good health," Shino said, bowing slightly, "and even better to know that my first assumption that you were all ninja was correct. I am slightly surprised that you are from Kusa, as your style isn't familiar, but that may have to do with the fact that you're orphans, or are you perhaps originally from another region?" Naruto looked hard at Shino. This guy was so creepy it wasn't even funny. Naruto had to wonder just what his other assumptions had been. Thankfully, both the others were ignoring Shino, which seemed normal. Kiba wasn't sure that he was happy or angry or surprised or what, and Yumi and Suzuki were off in their own private battle. Shino's question would have to remain unanswered. "Well, it looks like we'll be competing against you if your sensei lets you in," Naruto said, trying to gloss over things. "Who is your sensei anyways?" Kiba asked. "We never saw him, and what were you doing in Wave?" "Classified," Naruto smirked. "We're being taught by Honda sensei. He was busy with other things, and we were supposed to do the mission alone." "You don't have to have a sensei." Kiba always sobbed. "Kusa is too small to have a student-sensei system like ours. Usually the sensei will teach up to 3 groups, and even then, there are times when they are called away and the genin are forced to complete missions on their own." Shino seemed really well informed. "How do you know all this?" Kiba asked. "He reads," Yumi said calmly. "It involves books and it is generally done to gain knowledge of things around you. I'm sure you've never heard of it before." "I notice you didn't seem to know." Kiba shot back. "That's because, unlike Shino, I have no interest in being a walking book." Shino did not seem to change visibly, in fact he had no reaction at all. At least, not visibly. "Your bill," Tuka said with a bright smile, placing a slip of paper on in front of him. At first Naruto didn't really understand. There was a bill, but something was writing under it. "Hotel lobby. 1 o'clock. Wear uniforms. Someone will meet you." Naruto's eyes flickered up to Tuka, but he didn't show any reaction. He just fished out his wallet and took out the money. So, Tuka was part of Kirin. That was something that Naruto hadn't expected. Then again, Naruto knew next to nothing about the old chef, other than the fact that he had been one of the only people who had treated him normally before he had left. For all Naruto knew, Tuka was the leader of a secret organization who had decided to win Naruto's favor because of the Kyuubi. But really, it was kind of comforting to know that someone who he had cared for was going to help him now. "Thanks a lot." "Come again," Ayam called as Naruto paid and left, accompanied by Suzuki. "See you soon," Naruto called back. "There you are." Naruto whirled around to see Zabuza, Gaara, and Sai. "You idiot. Pay attention next time you are in a crowd. I don't care what you were thinking about. Knowing your age group and the company you've kept, it was something perverted. The next time you two do that, you're going to get a special training session." "I don't see you doing any better," Suzuki grumbled, but he was still a little subdued. "Besides, I found out where the hotel was." "Well, at least you did something useful," Zabuza admitted. "Yes, Honda-sensei," Suzuki said with a smirk. "And what were you doing?" "Sampling Konoha ramen." Naruto grinned. "That's your sensei?" Kiba exclaimed. He leaned close to Naruto. "He looks like a complete psychopath." "He is," Naruto hissed back, for just a brief moment forgetting everything and going back to when he and Kiba had been friends. "Well, it'll be interesting to see just how strong you really are," Yumi said, looking over Suzuki with a slight sneer. "Yeah," Kiba agreed, "Kusa's reputed to be a bunch of pushovers." "They may surprise you, Kiba," Shino cautioned. "They are ninja, and true ninja are taught to hide a great deal about themselves." Yeah, Kiba rolled his eyes. "We'll see you soon, Masaru-san." "Taiki-san," Shino said bowing. "By the way, Taiki-san, there was a spider very close to your ramen. Why didn't you kill it?" "It wasn't hurting anyone," Naruto said almost instantly, "and I don't mind spiders as much as some people." "I see." Shino said, "Good luck in the exams." With that all three left, Kiba grumbling about Kakashi and some mission and lateness. "That guy might have to be killed," Zabuza pointed out. Naruto nodded, but he was always kind of creepy, so that might just be him. "Anyway, let's get back," Sai cut in. "What happened while you were separated?" Naruto hissed to Suzuki. "I'll tell you later," was all that Naruto could get out of Suzuki. Naruto looked at the Hokage monument, and at Danzu's face. Everything was so different, yet similar. Like a distorted painting that someone had done, with only vague memories as a guide. This parody was the reality though, Naruto reminded himself, and tonight he was meeting his allies. "Don't worry," Naruto found himself thinking to the other 4 Hokages who, to Naruto's mind, looked unhappy about the new addition to their company. We'll make things right. That's a promise of a lifetime. Chapter 15, Part 2, Kainen. Naruto and the others found Hinata, Sakura, and Neji waiting for them outside the hotel. They hadn't seemed to have been waiting too long, or at least, that was what Hinata said. The other 2 looked more than a little put out at having to wait for the length of time that they had. After regrouping, they, not including Zabuza, who was busy sitting on the bed in his own room, polishing his sword, decided to hold a brief meeting in the room that the guys all shared. Thankfully the groups from different villages were not placed together. That would have been a pain to work with and might have actually led to at least one war. Particularly with the interesting combinations of personalities that were likely to result. Naruto didn't really want to have Sai in a room with anyone who didn't know what to expect, or wasn't a saint. We're going to have to separate ourselves into groups of 3, Neji said thoughtfully, and it would probably be best to have one medic on each team. Everyone nodded. Because Kimimaro, Neji, and I are the oldest, Haku suggested, maybe we should go together. I mean, it would be more logical for real teams to be arranged by age. Also, since Tsunade always made us team up together, we're used to working together. But Neji's younger than you, Gaara pointed out. We'll say that he was the replacement for another teammate, Kimimaro said, one that was tragically too injured to continue being a ninja. Judging by the fact that the genin here seem to be pretty bloodthirsty, I don't think it will be too pried into. It sounds like a good plan, Neji agreed. Team Kekkei Genkai was always a good combination. Alright, Naruto nodded. The rest of us, well, maybe we should go by skills, and I think we should go with the teams that Baa-chan always assigned us. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, known as Team Databia, much to Sasuke's annoyance and Sakura's amusement, were almost always teamed together in training. They were fighters that produced extremely powerful attacks, and seemed to work well in harmony with one another. Sai, Hinata, and Gaara, Team Shigo had also been paired up together. They were, in a way, more individual than Naruto's group, having vastly different attacks. Sounds good, Sai nodded. Hinata looked faintly disappointed. So, we just wait till 1, right? Sasuke asked. They were refraining from saying too much, since even though they had looked for someone, there was always a chance of someone eavesdropping and learning something dangerous. I guess we wait then, Sakura sighed. I hate waiting. Well, there's nothing that we can do, Kimimaro shrugged, other than maybe harass Honda-sensei a little. Sai grinned a little. Want to steal his sword? And get your hands chopped off? Neji cut in, that man is insane. Neji and I-san's right, Hinata agreed, if you want to prank him, go ahead. It might be good for him, but don't touch that sword. I think he'll take it personally. I heard him talking to it in his sleep, Naruto grinned as he leaned forwards. You're joking, Neji laughed. He addresses it as her, Sasuke added, taking a real interest in the conversation for the first time. Sasuke had been extremely withdrawn since they had gotten back. Naruto didn't know why, but he had a good guess. He had met someone that he had known. Maybe even his brother, and the encounter hadn't been what Sasuke had expected or wanted. It must be hard for him, Naruto thought, leaving hadn't been that painful for him, even though he had missed Iruka and still did, since he had no real family to miss. Sasuke had a family. Even if they hadn't really acted like it all the time, it must have been really hard for him. Well, I guess the superstition is true, Zabuza said, standing in the doorway. I sneezed, and what did I find? Well, you did call it her, Sasuke pointed out. That's none of your business. 1 in the morning took way too much time to come, in Naruto's opinion. Everyone went to bed, pretended to sleep, and waited for the right time to get ready. They had their uniforms carefully disguised as other clothes, tightly folded up, and placed in the bottom of the bags. All of them had been worried that their bags would be checked with the Sharingan or Byakugan, but that was the best that they could do on short notice, and thankfully, bags were not checked, if only to give the participants a sense of security. Finally, at 12:45, they prepared. It took little to no time to prepare. Uniforms on, and, just in case, armed to the teeth, they appeared in the lobby, clinging to the shadows. If anyone who they didn't know, or thought was a threat appeared, they were ready to attack. After all, one could never be too careful, and there was always a chance of betrayal or that someone in Kirin had been caught and interrogated. As they waited, a figure appeared in the room. "All right, Naruto-kun, everyone, you can come out now," Kakashi called in his usual cheerful yet bored tone. "I know that you're all waiting to see if it's a trap. Jiraiya-sama and Tsunade-sama really did teach you paranoia. Good. Killer lamppost," Naruto said, saying the first part of the password. "Flesh-eating teddy bears," Kakashi responded. "All right, you're sure it's me, now come out." Slowly they stepped out from the corners and walls, and Sai allowed the ink that was covering him to recede. "So, why did you want us to wear uniforms?" Sakura asked. "Because that way, if we were seen, you can get away without being identified," was all that Kakashi said, and his voice took on a much more serious tone. "Follow me." With that, Kakashi led the way out the door, and jumped onto the roof. Root is busy in this area tonight. They've received word that there might be a spy monitoring the Chunin exams in the civilian sector, and they'll be checking there all night. There are some Jounin who are on watch, but, well. There was a crash and a shout from somewhere. They're going to be a little busy. Anko-chan can be very, persistent when she wants to be. Come back here. It won't hurt for too long. Sakura and Hinata looked at each other, but no words were said. Kakashi led the way over the rooftops of Konoha, jumping from roof to roof with Hakumei right behind him. For a while it seemed like Kakashi was leading them nowhere, but after a while, Kakashi jumped down into a square formed by 4 apartment buildings. There were no windows facing the square, and there didn't seem to be anything there other than a porthole. Kakashi calmly lifted it up, and motioned that he was going to go down first. The others followed him, as quietly as they could. The porthole had a ladder that led down into a part of the sewers that Naruto, who had played there in the past, didn't recognize. It was darker, with less of the electric lights as the others, and something told him that this place wasn't used often, if it was still connected to the rest of the sewers at all. As they walked, the echoes of their footsteps reverberated around them and made the hair on the back of Naruto's neck stand up. "There is no emotion," a sudden voice spoke harshly. "Then there is no humanity," Kakashi responded. As soon as he had spoken, another figure joined them, but Naruto couldn't see who it was. "Sorry, Kakashi-san," the voice said. It was familiar, but Naruto couldn't put his finger on where he had heard it before, "but I thought that it might be a good idea to come before you reached the meeting room." "I understand, you can never be too careful," Kakashi nodded. "So, this is Hakumei?" the voice asked. "Yes, I'll introduce them properly with the others," Kakashi responded. "Is Anko-chan back yet?" "She wasn't there when I left, but she could have come back by now. I've been waiting for about a half hour." Naruto listened with interest, but kept his mouth shut. He had a feeling that this wasn't the time for him to say anything. Jiraiya had constantly harped on him about learning to keep his big mouth shut when something important was going on, and it looked like, finally, some of his words had begun to stick. The others were also quiet, mostly out of the interest in the conversation. Naruto knew that they were hoping for someone to say something illuminating. They finally reached a large door with plenty of traps around it, but most of them seemed to have been dismantled over the years. This used to be the place where Orochimaru performed his experiments on human test subjects, Kakashi told them. The Sandaime claimed to the council that he had completely destroyed it, but he was lying. I think that he had planned to one day come down here and investigate on his own. Something about Orochimaru's defection never seemed right to the Sandaime, but that's not important anymore. The point is that Root will not be down here looking for us. There's even a genjutsu on this door usually, making it look like it's blocked up. It's amazing what some people can do." Kakashi opened the door and the figure walked in. They were in a large room, lit by several old light bulbs. Some of them were burned out. Much of the room was taken up by various pickled things, floating in luminous liquids in jars. In the shadows of the room, there were many figures. All of them looked like they were apprehensive about being seen. "Yo," Kakashi greeted the room, raising one hand. "I've brought Hakumei here." "Are you sure that it's the real Hakumei?" a woman's voice asked. Yep, Kakashi nodded, they answered the question right, and the Danzu doesn't know enough about them to impersonate them too well. Almost immediately, more people than Naruto had thought could fit into the room appeared. They were all at least 17, and Chiryunin or higher. Yet, with all the ninja in Konoha, Naruto found himself slightly disappointed that there weren't more people. While it was a big group, Naruto could tell why they needed all the help that they could get. They were outnumbered. Badly. So, Kakashi, this is the group that managed to fight you and the demon of the bloody mist to a standstill, a woman's voice said, but they're still mercenaries. How does old Jiraiya know they're loyal? The woman stepped up. She was around 22, with purple hair and a brown trench coat. Under the coat there was armor that had been specifically designed to look as if it was light and flimsy. The skin-colored cloth woven into the armor did nothing to make it look any more useful, but Naruto had a feeling that that armor was probably more covering than most of the things that the samurai wore. Oh, I have a very good reason to know that they're loyal, Anko-chan, and I'll show you, Kakashi said with a bright smile. What do you mean, Kakashi-san? A man's voice asked. How can you be completely sure that they're loyal? Kakashi smiled again. Allow me to introduce the individual members of Hakumei, he said, and Naruto now knew just what Kakashi was doing. Sabaku no Gaara. Gaara stepped forwards and removed his mask. He gazed around and smiled a little. They didn't know him at all, well that was fine. I am Gaara, formerly of Suna. I am also the Jinhiriki for the Sheikaku, he said. I'm pleased to meet you and ask that when on a mission you refer to me as Sabaku. Haka no Kimimaro, Kakashi continued. Slowly Kimimaro removed his mask and looked at everyone, smirking slightly. I was once known as Kagaya Kimimaro, but ask that you refer to me as Haka, and never by my family name. Shinen no Sai. Sai took off his mask and smiled brightly. I don't have a last name, but I used to live in Konoha, even though none of you will have a clue who I am. He seemed to be enjoying this. Everyone just sort of stared. Hara no Haku. Haku bowed and removed his mask. I was Akiyama Haku, from Water Country, but that is not important anymore. Please call me Hara when we are masked. I look forwards to working with all of you, he told them. Ah, he's so cute. Anko smirked. I wouldn't think you were dangerous if I didn't read the report. I'm sorry, Kakashi-san, a cold voice stated, but I fail to see just how these people have anything to do with Danzu, unless their families were killed during the war, but even then. The figure stepped forwards and Naruto almost let out a startled cry. It was Iruka. He didn't look much older than he had when Naruto had run away, at least, not physically. His eyes were completely different, they were cold and hard, yet, depressed. Be patient, Iruka-san, Kakashi smiled, you'll see soon. I would like you all to meet the rest before you decide that they're not trustworthy. We never said that, another woman spoke up, walking forwards. She was very pretty, with black hair and crimson eyes. She seemed to be wearing scrolls as clothing. We just want to know why Jiraiya-sama spoke of them the way he did. You'll see, allow me to introduce, Nishoku no Sakura, Kakashi continued. Sakura took off her mask and looked around. She faced the blank stares and sighed a little, running one hand through her pink hair. Honestly, how many girls with hair like this do you see? She grumbled, I used to be Hara no Sakura. What? A man asked, stepped up. He had long blonde hair that was tied back in a ponytail. Hara no Sakura's dead. She was abducted and murdered by IWA years ago. Then I'm a really solid ghost. Sakura rolled her eyes. You know, a man leaning against the wall said thoughtfully, smoking a cigarette, no one ever did find the bodies. You mean? Iruka's eyes looked hard at each of the members still with their masks. I'm going to introduce Jeshoku no Hinata and Raisin no Niji together, since I think that they would probably prefer it. Hinata and Niji looked at Sakura who nodded, then they removed their masks, still with the genjutsu. What dash the smoking man began. Kai. Sakura called. There were a series of startled gasps as the genjutsu disappeared and Hinata's and Niji's eyes returned to their true milk-white color. They both looked around at the others, who were staring in shocked silence. Hello, Hinata said, it's very nice to meet you. As I'm sure you've already guessed, I was Hyuga Hinata, but I will not respond to that name. That goes for me as well, Niji said, stepping forwards. I was Hyuga Niji, but I will not answer to that name until the family changes. Besides, officially we are disowned. I have a question though. I've seen much of the Uchiha family, but why have the Hyuga not grown in power? It seems that there is an agreement between the Uchiha clan and the Fukugo dame. There has always been a rivalry between the Hyuga and Uchiha since the Hyuga settled in Konoha, and the Uchiha seemed to have come to an agreement that they would support him if he gave them power. The Hyuga clan is no less respected, but it has lost a tremendous amount of power over the years. A sick-looking man walking out from the shadows, coughing. I'm not sure what the dynamics of the clan itself are, but I know that the official clan head, Hayashi, is under a great deal of stress to raise the position of the clan. It seems that nothing's changed then, Niji said dismissively. No, not really, the man agreed. Naruto thought that he probably should have taken the night off, but, I feel that you should know, both of you. Your kidnapping was a rather convenient thing, for you. Hayashi has no knowledge of this, but I managed to discover that the elders of the Hyuga clan were going to kill the pair of you, in order to preserve the secrets of the clan. As you are no longer official members, you are not subject to the clan's laws of secrecy. Hayashi was ignorant of this. Hinata asked. Completely, the man nodded, unless I am very wrong. I see. Kakashi coughed to get everyone's attention. This is the second in command of Hakumei, according to Jiraiya-sama, Arashi no Suzuki. Suzuki removed his mask and stepped forwards, looking bored. I'm sure you've guessed by this time, but I was Uchiha Suzuki. After seeing what my former family has become, I'm glad I'm no longer associated with them. Even my parents and perhaps my brother, although I haven't seen him. For obvious reasons, a man chewing on a stick muttered, Uchiha Itachi defected 5 years ago. Suzuki took a step back. What? Why? The man shrugged. Who knows, he disappeared one night, killing a squad of the military police. No one's heard anything of him since then. He's all but dropped off the face of the planet. We had hoped that you would have some news of him. Anko rolled her eyes. What do you mean by we? She said. I told you that I agreed that Itachi went looking for Suzuki, but if they were under the protection of the Sunin, then there was no way that he would be able to find them. Itachi was an expert at tracking, the guy was an expert at everything, but even he couldn't find someone once the Sunin decided they didn't want them found. Suzuki's head was down and his eyes were hard to see, but he said nothing. Naruto assumed that he was digesting this new information. Man, this was just not Suzuki's day. First he runs into someone who had obviously hurt him, then he finds out that the older brother who he had always admired was a missing nin and a murderer, and possibly because of him. Finally, I would like to introduce the leader of Hakumei. Kakashi seemed completely unfazed and completely happy to do his introduction slowly. This is Shibuya no Naruto. Naruto removed his mask, grinning a little nervously. He didn't have the presence of Suzuki or Niji that just commanded respect. In fact, he had a huge handicap in the Kyuubi. Tsunade had once told him that half the reason that he got on so badly with people who he just met was because that they could at some level feel the Kyuubi's presence, and it made them take an immediate dislike to him. Naruto raised one hand to the shocked silence. Iruka was staring at him with a strange mix of emotions that Naruto couldn't catch on his face. Then he was suddenly engulfed in a hug. Naruto wasn't all that used to physical contact. Tsunade wasn't the huggiest person in the world, and when Sakura hugged him, it was usually to get something from him. It took a great deal of self-control to keep him from stiffening in Iruka's embrace. Hi, Iruka-sensei. Naruto said with a small smile, aren't you going to yell at me or make your head look huge the way you did when I goofed off in class? I mean, I've missed all of your boring lectures. Iruka said nothing, but finally, he let Naruto go. His face seemed to have softened considerably. Why, Naruto? He asked, what happened to make you not come back? Do you have any idea how worried I was? Naruto didn't know what to say to those words. He stared at Iruka and realized that at some level, he had never really thought that anyone would ever really worry about him all that much outside of Hakumei, and they would never say those words so bluntly. When he was younger, he had never had anyone who told him when to be home, and there had been times when he had been out all night, just because he was bored. Or maybe it had been because he felt less alone outside than he had in the silent house. "I'm sorry, Iruka-sensei," Naruto said, seriously, "things happened so fast, there was no way we could have told you that we were alright. Why didn't you come back?" The shout echoed in the room, and others made hushing noises at Iruka, who wasn't listening. "We couldn't," Naruto mumbled, "they would have killed us." Iruka opened his mouth, but Kakashi interrupted. "Hakumei has a rather interesting story to tell all of us," he said. "I don't know most of it myself, but Jiraiya-sama informed me that it had to do with IWA and why they vanished." "It's a bit more involved than that," Hinata said, looking around at everyone. We saw the Sandaime die on that night." There was a collective intake of breath. "What?" The woman with red eyes said. "You saw Iwa's assassination squad." Hinata Amuto didn't say that, Niji cut in, she just said that she saw the Sandaime murdered, IWA had nothing to do with it. "What?" Even the guy chewing on the stick stopped. "The Sandaime wasn't assassinated, he was murdered," Sasuke said. "We were all in the playground that night for different reasons that really aren't important anymore. A little after we met up, we heard the voices of two men talking and hid in some nearby bushes. The Sandaime and someone else came into view. The other person wanted the Sandaime to abdicate and name him as his successor, and the Sandaime refused, saying that he didn't think that it was a good time. At that, the other man just seemed to shift and the Sandaime was suddenly on the ground, bleeding. The man didn't notice us for some reason, he was probably too busy thinking about what he had just done to really look around for onlookers. He left, and when we ran over to the Sandaime, he was still alive, barely. He gave us some scrolls, told us to run, and died there. All of us agreed to run away that night, and escaped," Sasuke told his brief revision of events. "That's why we couldn't come back," Naruto said to Iruka. "We were afraid we'd be killed since we'd seen what had really happened, and Danzo wanted an excuse to go to war." There was a brief, heavy silence and the room erupted into talk. It seemed they would never leave. The story had to be repeated over and over again. Kurane, the red-eyed woman, wanted to hear over and over how they hid, mostly because she was astounded that Danzo hadn't killed them. Hate had listened only once and was speaking in a hushed voice to a woman with long purple hair, who was nodding. Iruka had been completely silent for a very long time, but was still watching Naruto, who wasn't talking much. No one seemed like they didn't believe the story, and if anyone was having thoughts about killing Danzo, they weren't now. Iruka was chosen to lead Hakumei to the hotel, and he was silent for the entire trip. Naruto occasionally dropped glances at him, but he didn't know what to say. Iruka had really been the closest thing that Naruto had had to a father in Konoha, and now, well, what was he supposed to say to him? His apology somehow didn't seem enough, and he felt that he had let Iruka down somehow. "Nar, Shibuya," Iruka said, once he had led them to the lobby, "can you stay behind for a moment?" Naruto nodded, and waited while the others went upstairs. "What is it, Iruka-sensei?" Naruto asked. "I just want you to know." Iruka said, "When you disappeared, Danzo took over and everything completely changed. In order to keep my job, I had to adhere to the practices of the new regime. I thought that if I just acted like I agreed with him, and didn't secretly, nothing would really change, but I found myself doing and saying things that I wouldn't have done or said before. I realized I was changing into what Danzo wanted me to be, and that the same thing probably was happening to those who had managed to keep their positions. Anko says that I developed a sort of split personality, but, well, I'm not the Iruka-sensei that you knew. I'm not angry that you left. I might have been when you just returned like nothing had happened, but I understand, and maybe, well. Iruka-sensei." Naruto had to cut in, "You sound like you're breaking up with your girlfriend." There were some splutters. "Before I left, I always kind of thought of you like a sort of dad," Naruto admitted, "but I never really thought to think about if you were worried about me or not." "Stupid really, I mean, all those times you got mad at me for being late or sleeping in class was because you were worried about me. The point of what I'm saying is that I still think of you like that. The rest of Hakumei are like my siblings, and Ero-Senin and Bahn are like my grandpa and grandma, or pervy uncle and aunt. Sometimes it's hard to tell which, but you were always kind of my dad." So you had to toughen up a little, so what? Iruka-sensei is Iruka-sensei. Thanks Naruto, Iruka smiled, you've grown up a lot since I saw you last. I sure hope so. Sasuke couldn't fall asleep, and nothing seemed to be able to help. Gaara had gone to the bathroom when he finally gave up and decided to sit in the lobby. His head was spinning like it was the day that he had first heard that the Uchiha family was cursed. Now, he believed it. There must be some sort of curse on it. Itachi had gone insane and killed a bunch of people. Kairon thought that Itachi had gone off looking for Sasuke, but Sasuke knew better. If Itachi had really wanted to find him, he would have, because Itachi was perfect at everything, and besides, Sasuke had probably just been a burden to him anyways, a problem that constantly needed to be looked after, nothing more. Sasuke. Sasuke turned around to see Sakura, who was standing in the doorway, watching him. Her eyes were worried and she was biting her lip. Without saying anything, she walked in and sat down next to him. So, how are you holding up? She asked. What do you mean by that? Sasuke tried to sound somewhat indignant. Sasuke, Sakura rolled her eyes, I've known you for who knows how long. You've always really looked up to your brother, and you really cared about your family, no matter how much you complained about them. Today you found out that your brother's a missing nin and your family is a bunch of power-hungry nutcases who helped the man who murdered the Sandaime get into power. You're having insomnia, and Naruto's been giving you worried looks. I know you haven't told anyone what you really feel and I just thought that maybe. Sakura trailed off, she looked embarrassed and ready to get up and run back upstairs. I saw my mother today, Sasuke said suddenly, she didn't even know it was me. She looked at me like I was a bug or something, and I realized that was how she had always looked at people outside of our clan. When I finally recovered, I wasn't sure if I wanted to see Itachi again. What if he was the same? What if he looked at me with those same cold eyes? Then they told me that he was a missing nin, and, if he had looked for me, he... Sasuke's voice was having trouble, and what was worse, it was right in front of Sakura. This, for some reason, was worse than it would have been had he lost it in front of anyone else, even Kimimaro. Even Sai. Don't be stupid. Sakura said angrily, Baka. I don't care how good your brother was, didn't you ever notice that Jiraiya's house had the mother of all genjutsu around it? I don't know how the man did it, or if it was someone else, but no one would have found that thing unless he had taken them there. As far as your mom goes, well, then aren't you glad that she didn't remember you? She would have reported us, or worse, and now you don't have to worry about where your loyalties lie. We're your family, Sasuke. All of us. Probably including your brother. Sasuke smiled a little. While he wasn't so sure about Itachi anymore, what Sakura had said had actually made him feel much better. She did have that effect on him sometimes, making his more unpleasant moods lighten. Even if the problem wasn't solved, the burden was lighter to bear. Sakura, arigato. Sasuke muttered. Heh, you're welcome. Naruto slept later than the others, who, including Zabuza, had gone off sightseeing, making a map of the new Konoha and becoming accustomed to the layout. Naruto dragged himself downstairs and asked if there was a message for him. There wasn't, which wasn't unexpected, but Naruto, fully acting the part, looked surprised, but didn't say anything. He would be left to his own sightseeing, which might have proved beneficial anyways. Naruto thought about going back to Ichiraku, but although his stomach rejoiced at the idea, his common sense told him not to be stupid. He had been there once already, and few people hung around a single place. Naruto left the hotel, thinking about where to have breakfast. He didn't know that many places really, it was usually just ramen for him, but he would have to be different, there weren't that many completely ramen-obsessed people running around. While he was thinking this, he felt something run into him with a crash. Out of instinct, Naruto had reached down and grabbed the thing by the shirt. Hey Lego Amy! A kid's voice yelled, trying to sound threatening, but only managing annoying. Naruto stared at the kid, who was wearing the weirdest hat that he had ever seen, and pants and a t-shirt with a very long scarf. He was struggling wildly and looked like he was trying to bite Naruto. Oh, great, you found my punching bag, a familiar voice said, as Kankuro walked up, he was glaring at the kid. That brat almost broke one of my weapons. It's your fault for playing with dolls. The kid yelled. Kankuro's hand balled into a fist. Did this kid run into you too? He asked Naruto. I'll tell you what, we can share him. You wouldn't dare hurt me. The kid yelled. I'm the grandson of the Sandaime. That caught both of their attentions. While the kid laughed at how they had to put him down now, Kankuro and Naruto looked at each other. You think he's telling the truth? Kankuro asked. I'm surprised, Naruto admitted. I would have thought that the root would be breathing down our necks now. I guess that either he's lying, or they just don't care, Kankuro smirked. Kankuro, this is a 7-year-old, Naruto said. I'm 9. The kid cut in. Won't we be going down to his level if we beat him up? Naruto asked. Kankuro glared at the brat but sighed a little. Yeah, I guess I'm tense or something. Tamari's been up since 4 attacking us randomly, and Matsuri's working on her, whatever. I wanted to work on my techniques, and then this little spy goes around saying that I'm playing with dolls. Kankuro must have been tense. He was telling a complete stranger how he attacked. Naruto said nothing, knowing that this was probably not the best thing to point out to him. Naruto calmly dropped the kid on the ground. Ha! The great Kano Amaru, grandson of the Sandaime, defeats his enemies. He crowed. Naruto looked at Kankuro. I understand you wanting to kill him, he said, ignoring the kid. Yeah, but now that you mention it, I don't want to be arrested. Stop ignoring me. Kano Amaru yelled, I'm the grandson of the Sandaime. Like I care, Naruto said, rolling his eyes and walking away, Kankuro going in the opposite direction. Just cause your grandpa was someone worth respecting doesn't mean you are. Naruto walked on knowing that the kid was following him, but not paying him any kind of attention whatsoever. He finally stopped at something that he recognized on sight, the playground. Niji had mentioned going there and meeting some weird guy in tights and a shiny bowl cut, but Naruto was surprised that his feet had taken him here of all places. He stopped and looked around. It hadn't changed, not at all. Hey, Takei, Naruto heard Sai's voice, did you know that there is a rock following you around? Naruto rolled his eyes at Sai's words, but Sai seemed more amused than anything else. He was actually smiling. You have such a way with kids, he said, walking up to Naruto and leaning against the side of the slide. HN. You sound like Masaru. Ack. Don't compare me to him when he acts like that. Sai laughed a little. Well, I just thought to tell you, Honda-sensei wants us to meet him in training ground 3 that he's managed to reserve for us somehow. I think he wants to murder us before the exams. Well, I'll see you then. Sai started to walk off, waving his hand. Hey, don't leave me with this totally suspicious square rock with obvious eye holes. Sai ignored him. Apparently they had decided without him that the best plan of action would be to split up. Well, maybe he shouldn't have overslept and he would have known what was going on. Naruto glared at it, losing patience. A square rock with eye holes doesn't exist. Try again, he rolled his eyes. There was a big poof of smoke and Kano Amaru appeared, throwing off the box, and trying to strike an impressive pose. Just what I would expect from the man who I wish to train me. He yelled. What? Naruto asked, shocked. Train me. Kano Amaru cried. Go talk to that other guy. He plays with dolls. Naruto stared at him. Don't you have a teacher? Kano Amaru looked down at the ground. No, Uncle Asuma says he'll teach me when I'm older, but I want to be Hokage as soon as I can. Naruto looked at him and cocked his head a little. Why? Why should I tell you? Kano Amaru yelled, you're a foreign ninja. Who you want to teach you? Naruto pointed out. Kano Amaru was quiet for a moment and looked embarrassed. He sat down on the swing set and didn't talk for some time, then, haltingly he spoke. I don't remember Ji-san. I was only 4 or so when he died, and, Dad used to tell me all kinds of stories about what he was like before he died, and when Uncle Asuma started to take care of me, he told me other stories. I want to be better than he was, but I don't want the ninja here to teach me. All they ever do is tell me what Ji-san did wrong. I don't care what he didn't do. I want to be Hokage, and then everyone will have to stop badmouthing him and listen to me. And you want my help because I'm not going to tell you what your Ji-san did wrong? Naruto asked. Yeah. Konohamaru nodded. Naruto looked at the kid hard. In some ways he reminded Naruto of himself, but in others, he was happy to say that there was nothing in common between them. You know that I'm going to be your rival one day, right? Naruto asked. I'm not from this village, and one day, I may be your enemy. Who cares? Konohamaru yelled, Boss. Naruto blinked. What did you call me? Boss, boss, boss. Konohamaru chanted. How did this even happen? Naruto asked the sky above him, but still felt oddly pleased. All right, I'll teach you something. This is the surefire way to cause a serious distraction on the battlefield as long as your opponent isn't blind, or has no emotion whatsoever. I've even immobilized an S-class ninja with this once. This is a technique that I made up and it's called Warak no Jutsu. Check the description for the links to the author.